So let's kick off. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction to the main speaker this evening. I'm very pleased and with great thanks to welcome Lance Bradley this evening, who is the current Chief Executive Officer of the Gloucester Rugby Club. However, his previous life, over 30 years, was a career in the automotive industry. Following his university degree, he joined Ford Motor Company's graduate scheme and rose pretty rapidly through the ranks and filled some of the most high-profile jobs in Ford's UK operation. His career saw him work in UK, Europe, and around the world. In 2000, he was approached by Mitsubishi Motors and he joined them, initially as General Sales Manager, then as Sales and Marketing Director, and in 2009 was appointed the Managing Director. And in his tenure as the MD, he delivered the record sales volumes and profitability for the Japanese brand. And in 2016, he was awarded Autocar's prestigious Outstanding UK Leader Award following the groundbreaking launch of the Outlander Few, the UK's first commercially successful electrical vehicle. And while he was there, Mitsubishi was also the first manufacturer in the UK to offer their entire range of vehicles for sale online via a purpose-built, easy-to-use portal. And this is where I came across Lance at the time. In his time as the managing director of Mitsubishi extensively relied upon sponsorship and partnership deals to promote their brand and products. These included the development of a long-standing arrangement with the Badminton Horse Trials and new partnerships which Lance put in place with Gloucester Rugby, Edinburgh Rugby, Scottish Rugby, and England Rugby. However, in 2018, he announced his decision to move on from Mitsubishi Motors and to pursue new challenges. In that year, he joined Gloucester as a non-executive director and became Chief Executive Officer in 2019. And just before I hand over, and clearly the webinar is entitled Sponsorship, despite the significant impact of COVID-19, Lance has grown sponsorship revenue at Gloucester Rugby Club by 50%. Lance, thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Dave. That's great. Thank you for that introduction. Can you hear me okay? That's good. Great. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. And thanks to Dave and the guys at the RFU for inviting me to do this. It's something we're at Gloucester Rugby really keen to promote rugby and help rugby across the whole country, regardless of who it might be and whatever else is going on. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here this evening. Great introduction there, so thank you for that. What I'm going to talk about this evening, this is who I am. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Gloucester Rugby. As Dave mentioned, I've previously been at Ford Motor Company and then Mitsubishi Motors, and I joined Gloucester in 2019. A little bit of some of the things that I did, just to put it in context here. When I was at Ford, a lot of my time was in sales and marketing, and that included things like advertising. I was involved in the Champions League sponsorship when Ford used to do that, and I was involved in dealer management. And the reason I include that is that a lot of the dealers would get involved in local sponsorship. So it was kind of the first learning for me for what that entailed and what it looked like. I moved to Mitsubishi Motors as sales and marketing, and then as managing director. And of course, in both those roles, I was heavily involved in marketing strategy and in sponsorship. So the first question, why sponsorship? Why when we were at Mitsubishi, why would we take part in sponsorship? What were our motivations for doing that? And the key things that we had were where we wanted to associate our brand with other brands. It was a way of raising the profile of our brand. Not very many people are aware, but Mitsubishi was only a 1% market share player in the UK. Most people thought that we had much higher market share than that. So it was to raise our profile. It was to raise brand awareness with key customer groups. So it was much more targeted than advertising is, because with sponsorship, you can appeal to key customer groups. And you know, we talked a bit about rugby earlier and why we targeted that. It's because the people who watch rugby tended to be people who were interested in slightly premium, very efficient four-wheel drive vehicles. And we knew, because that was the range we had, that rugby would be a good target market. And also to have have access to those specific groups. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means. It's not just advertising to them, it's actually having access to speak to those groups as well. Those were the things that were important. But there was one more thing as well, and that was really to support organizations or events that we felt a connection with. So sponsorship was, there was obviously a business element to it, but there's also a passion element to it as well, and an emotional element to it, not just the numbers, although the numbers obviously are important. Dave mentioned some of the organisations that we worked with. We sponsored England Netball. We wanted to increase our presence amongst more especially young women as we launched some cars that we were targeting particularly at them. We sponsored the Salford Red Devils rugby league team. We sponsored the RFU. We had our brand on the front of the England under-20s shirts, Edinburgh Rugby, Scottish Rugby, the Badminton Horse Trials, and of course Gloucester Rugby. So they were the main sponsorships that we did, and it was kind of important for us to have a strong presence in some sectors like rugby and not to spread ourselves too thin. So there were particular things that we wanted to make sure where we were represented, but not to spread ourselves too thinly. And what did we expect from sponsorships? We expected media value. So for these big sponsors, you can assess what the value of those sponsorships is. So that was important to us. It was important for us to be able to access that customer base. So it was important for us to be able to either physically meet or have access to them through emails, of course, all GDPR compliant, but to be able to get to that customer base. Data collection was really important, and the opportunity for data collection was really important. And I'll come on to data again in just a short while, because that's the next battleground with sponsorship, what data you can offer. We wanted opportunities to sell, so we wanted to have the chance to say to somebody, look, this is our product, and this is how you can buy it. We were also interested in money can't buy experiences, and I put that in inverted commas because obviously money can buy them, but for most people, they're experiences that you just can't get, that you have access to because of the relationship with that organization. And finally, the thing that was important to us was that whoever we were working with, that it was for both of us a win-win partnership. It was never about, none of the sponsorships that we did were about us paying a check and having our brand displayed somewhere. It had to be much more than that. There had to be things that we could do for our partners that they perhaps couldn't do for themselves, and that they could do for us, which we couldn't do for ourselves. And that relationship was critically important. And that's why many of the relationships that we had went on for a very long time. You know, the badminton relationship went on for 30 years because we both felt that we were getting something from that. So just to explain what that means, just a little bit, and I'm not trying to teach anybody to suck eggs here, but this is purely from our perspective. Obviously, you'll all have your own perspectives on things, but for us, the media value, we assessed it by how many people saw our brand in that sponsorship, and that helps determine what it's worth. So if an advert costs X pounds, then a name on a shirt seen by some similar number of people is worth Y pounds, and Y is less than X, because if you're placing an advert, people are generally looking at that advert. If you're putting a name on a shirt, people are watching the rugby, they're not looking for an advert on the shirt. So the value of it is less than the cost of an advert, but it helps it put it into some kind of perspective. But brand exposure itself, however good it was, and some of our brand exposure was fantastic, brand exposure alone wasn't sufficient for us. There were other things that we wanted to get as well. And in particular, the access to the customer base, the opportunity for data collection and opportunities to sell were really important. So we were looking for opportunities to display our products, to talk to potential customers, to collect their data and have the chance of selling them something. As I say, we were a 1% player in the UK car market. So we knew that most people were not considering a Mitsubishi when they came to buy a new car. They may not even know what products we had. So the opportunities that we had to show them those products and to talk to them and to collect their email address so that we can contact them later were the things that were particularly attractive to us. And I say again, data is king. That's where the next battleground is. The more data we were able to collect, the more valuable the sponsorship was to us. And these were the kind of things that we did to place the products or to achieve the data capture. So the one on the left was from the Badminton Horse Trials. We actually had a couple of our pickup trucks formed one of the jumps. So not only did the crowds who were there see it, but everybody who watched on TV saw the products right in the center of the presentation. But in other situations, the top ones at Murrayfield displaying products as people go in. The bottom two are at Twickenham. The one in the middle there where there's youngsters throwing a ball into holes in a setup. You can't collect data from youngsters, but you can say you can win a prize, and if your mum or dad wants to give us your email address, if you win the prize, then we'll be able to contact you. So it's thinking of imaginative ways of being able to collect that data, giving customers a reason to provide that data. And then we looked at money can't buy experiences, and what could our partners offer us that our customers or our potential customers wouldn't normally be able to access. And we can all do these kind of things. You know, what can be offered that money can't buy? And we used to use them sometimes for staff incentives, but often for customer incentives, or also for social media opportunities. It's always interesting to see something unusual happening on a social media platform, but also again for data collection. And the kind of things that we were talking about, we offered people the chance to go in the car that led the England team into Twickenham. You know, what a thrill for a fan to be able to do that. Similarly for the Scotland team in the top right there. But other things as well, like a coaching class with Eddie Jones. That was a fantastic data collection exercise. So we invited anybody, schools, clubs, whoever, to attend. All you had to do is to put your data, give us your email address so we could collect your data and use it later. And things like design the vehicle that leads the team in. And again, that was a hugely popular and a phenomenally successful exercise. We provided a color-in template of in this case, a pickup truck, and all you had to do was send in your entry to us with your email address in it. A few small details about who you were and what you were interested in, and then you had the chance for your design to go on to the vehicle that led either the England or the Scotland team in at Murrayfield. So just fairly simple things, but great at collecting the data. So I did all that, and then I went over to the other side of the fence, and that was very interesting to do that, having been working on sponsorships for quite a long time from the sponsor's point of view, to move across to Gloucester Rugby and look at it from the other side of the fence. And I have to say, understanding what sponsors want was a huge advantage. It made a really big difference to us, because it enables you to enable me to put myself in the customer's shoes, if you like, and that's always a good thing to do. And what we did, and this was you know, this wasn't everything we did, but the big things that we did. The first thing that we did was we created an inventory of all of our sponsorship assets. So what do we have to sell? What do we have to offer? And it included kit, stadium stands, player sponsorship, lounges, our academy, really everything that I knew might provide value to a sponsor, and list it out so that we can have that list of them, but then put a value on each of them. And I know it's very tempting, and you know, money's tough after COVID and everything else, but it was important to us to put a value on each of those assets. There's always a temptation if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, I'll give you £1,000 for that," to accept it because it's £1,000, and we'd done that, but we stopped doing it because if it was worth £5,000, then we really needed to get £5,000 or very close to £5,000 for it. So £1,000, although it's kind of better for nothing, in the long run it isn't, because we wanted to have pride in what we did, and to not undersell things just because we didn't have anything else. So, you know, we have some assets that are still not sold because we don't have anybody offering the right value for them, and therefore we're not going to sell them for a lot less than we think they're worth. So we put a value on everything. We created packages from those assets. So the packages were flexible. It was no good saying to a sponsor, you know, you can have front of shirt and you've got to take all of these things too. You've got to listen to what people are wanting to achieve and then recommend a package to them, and you have to be flexible with it. But we created those packages from those assets, and we put each package into a tier with permissible assets in each tier. And I'll come on to what I mean by permissible assets in this case after the next slide. So we looked at how we could tier our sponsorship packages, and what we did, we made sure that there was a tier that everybody could afford. So we set up a business club, quite a simple. Many of you will have business clubs, I know, and there's an amount per month for that, which is pretty affordable for most local businesses. And for that, you get advertising on our website. We're fortunate enough, we have several million people visit our website every year, so that has a value in itself. We advertise those businesses, we highlight them every now and again in our newsletters and in our other social media activity. And you also get to come to a breakfast meeting every quarter where we talk about what's going on at the club, and we have a guest speaker in and all the rest of it. So the £49 a month is pretty good value, and we've got hundreds of members there, and that's not limited. But all of those businesses feel proud because they're almost all quite local businesses, and they want to support their club. So they want to be able to do something that says, yeah, I support my club, I support Gloucester Rugby, and we allow them to use Gloucester Rugby Business Partner in their own advertising, so that they can advertise to their own customers that they are supporting us. And that's quite a draw for many of these companies. And you know, we're not shy in asking our partners to do something for us. So yes, we're taking money from them, but we're asking them to include our branding and say that they're supporting the club, because it's still important for us to get our name out as far as possible, and for us to be associated with as many local businesses as we can. You know, the community is very important to us, so we want to be seen to do that. So we've got that entry level tier, and that's quite popular. And then we've got bronze partners, and our bronze partners are typically those organizations that have an advertising board around the stadium, not in the TV arc, but one of the other advertising boards, or a relatively low level of sponsorship, but nonetheless very important to us. And we have an unlimited number of those partners. And then we've got a silver partnership level over a bigger amount, and we have no more than 10 of those partners. And then gold partners, which is a bit more than that, and we have no more than 6 of those partners. And then we have the platinum partner, who's our main sponsor. And the reason that we structure it like that is because, and it actually came from my experience of the car industry, the way that you set up a range in a car model is you have the entry model, which most people come in and say that I think that's the one I want. And then you have the next one up the range that's a bit more expensive, but it's much better value. And then you have the next one up that's also a bit more expensive, but even better value again. And what you try to do is you walk customers up the range. So you say, well, I know you were thinking of spending £500 a month, but if you were going to spend £600 a month, you could get this car. And that's what we've tried to do here, so that when we're looking for sponsors, instead of just trying to find somebody who wants to spend a 6 or 7 figure sum with us, which is really hard to do, we can go to somebody who's already in the tier below that's used to spending a reasonable amount with us and say, look, you're spending this much, maybe we can walk you up a bit more and this is what you'd get for it. So the business club is particularly important for us because that £600 a year to walk one of those businesses up to a couple of £1,000 a year for a perimeter board or whatever it might be, it is a much easier conversation than to go to somebody who doesn't know us and say, can you give us £2,000? So that's how we tiered everything. But the other reason that we tiered it was so that people would be clear about what they could get as each part for each sponsorship. And that's what I mean by permissible assets. Now, every partner that we've got is important, but we have to manage people's expectations. Every single sponsor that we have, even if it's a perimeter board or anything else, everybody wants George Skivington and Lewis Rees Summit to come along and open their new showroom for them. And we would love to be able to say yes to that, but of course it's not possible. And it's also not fair on the sponsors who are paying a lot of money that somebody who's not paying so much money gets exactly the same rights. So when companies sign up with us, we explain what will and what will not be possible. So if you want George to come along twice a year or whatever it might be, then you have to be a gold sponsor. And this is what we'll do for it. If you want Zam to come along to an opening, then you have to be our platinum partner because that's who he works with. And it just means that everybody knows what to expect right at the start. So we did all that. Then we compared the contracts that we had with what we felt they were worth. And as you would expect, some of them were very good. Some of them were okay. Some were really poor. And some of our key assets were unsold, which again, you would expect. And then we said about extending the good contracts. We spoke to companies who we felt had a deal which didn't work for us with the view to improving it. And this was kind of happening after I joined the club a couple of years ago. And you know, important to remember, it's not their fault they've got a good deal. It just doesn't work for us. So we couldn't disrespect anybody, but we did need to explain to a few people, look, you're paying this for it, but let me show you why actually it's worth this much. So of course we'll stick to the contract, but when we come to renew it, we either need to talk about an increase or we need to talk about you doing something else. And if you're honest with people, that's gone down pretty well. And of course, we started to target companies for the unsold assets that we had. And this was quite a challenge. So how did we target those companies? Well, we looked at companies who were already on our database. You know, we've already got companies that come along to our hospitality, or people who buy tickets through their company, people who buy a box through their company. So we looked at those people first because they're people who already knew us. We looked at companies within our catchment area, and our catchment area we tend to think of as Gloucestershire. Mostly we go a little bit outside that, but not far outside of it. And again, most of our sponsors are local companies, even if they look like international companies, and some of them are international companies, but they mostly have a local presence. And then we researched their CEO, their marketing director, or other members of their senior marketing team to see if they had an interest in rugby. It's always much easier to push against an open door rather than have to explain why rugby's great, to have somebody already knows that. In fact, when the RFU approached us at Mitsubishi about sponsoring them, they sent a lovely package to my sales and marketing director. And Toby didn't like rugby, and he came in to see me and said, look what I've got. And I said to him, look, you know, investigate it, but for goodness sake, don't let me be involved in it, because as soon as I'm involved in it, I'm going to say, yeah, let's do it, because I would be excited about it, and that isn't the best way to negotiate. So I actually didn't get involved in that bit until Toby had done all the groundwork. But if you can find people that you know are interested in rugby, it's always easier to talk to them. Then we researched their current marketing and sponsorship activity to see what they were doing. If they were already very committed to a lot of different things, then we looked at other targets. If they were already doing a couple of things that were kind of similar, then that made it more attractive. And then based on their turnover, which obviously you can get from Companies House, we estimated what their marketing budget might be. Clearly it's no good approaching somebody to spend 6 figures with you if their total turnover is not enough to cover that. So we did all of that research, and that was quite a lot of work doing that research. And then we created a presentation which we sent to those target companies. And it was a box actually based on the box that the RFU sent us. So it was a box with a shirt in it with their name already emblazoned on the front of it, and a book that showed how exciting it was to be involved with Gloucester Rugby. And we really tried to create an emotional impact with plenty of visuals, including this video that we included.
Your whole team with me.
So we had that the package, and it was an emotional appeal. The shirt and the video making people feel excited about the club. But as you saw, at the end it included a very short but punchy message about this is what's in it for you. So Big Doug increased their brand awareness by 125%. Packages are available from this price. This is how to contact us. And of course, we didn't wait for them to contact us. We followed up with them. We also talked about our plans for the club and what we were hoping to achieve in the next 5 years, and highlighted the role that they could play in it. Because it's not, as I said before, it's not just a case of having your name up somewhere. We want to fully involve people where we can. And it talked about data and the reach that we have. It didn't talk about specific pricing, but it did talk about the price range of the packages on offer. And the aim of that pack was for them to agree to meet. It's always easier to sell face-to-face. And once we got people into the stadium, we can show them the assets that they may be interested in. Everybody gets excited coming to a rugby ground. If you've got any interest in rugby, it's exciting coming to a rugby ground. And it's easy for us to forget that. I work at Kingsholm every day, and I look out on the pitch every day. Nobody else gets to do that. Normal people in proper jobs don't get to look at that. So inviting them in to see that, even though it's not necessarily exciting to us, it is exciting to other people. And where we had people companies coming in for serious the biggest sponsorships, gold and platinum sponsors, we'd always speak to the head coach or the captain or the star player to happen to drop by the meeting. And if we knew that their son or daughter loved whoever it might be, they'd happen to come in and drop off an autographed shirt or whatever it might be, just to make them feel special, one of those money can't buy experiences. And then at the end of that meeting, we presented a menu of sponsorship options, and each one has our value listed alongside each asset, with an increasing discount for taking more assets. We always aim for 3-year agreements because you don't want to keep renewing them every year if you can avoid that, and 3 years allows you time to build a decent relationship with organizations. And we always include an inflation figure for each year. So it was it was this kind of thing. And obviously the numbers are just random numbers, but if we had 5 assets, so package 1 would have 3 of those assets, package 2 would have 4 of them, package 3 would have 5 of them. So the value of those assets would be 850, 1,000, 1125. And we'd say, but, you know, and if you take all 3 of those assets, obviously you get a discount, you get a 5% discount. If you take 4 of them, you get a bigger discount. And if you take 5 of them, you get a bit bigger discount again. So the money that you get goes up. And obviously each of those assets, asset 5 doesn't cost £125. And as a package, it's much better to sell a package if you can, even if you're offering a bit of discount on it. And I mentioned the inflation figure, and we just put in an inflation figure each year as to how much the package goes up. So what the cost is in year 2 and the cost in year 3. And we present that. And when you present figures like that, what we found is that I know that everybody wants a deal, and they do. But what we found was that nobody argued about the values. So nobody said, I don't think asset 1's worth £100 or asset 2's worth £500. And nobody argued about the inflation figure, because everybody knows that there's inflation. They did sometimes ask if the discount figure would be increased, but because you're only focusing on one number in the negotiation, it means you can turn it around and say, well, if I came into your business and I bought 3 things, how much discount would I get? Okay, all right, I might get 5%. If I bought 5 things, would I get 15% discount? Probably not. You'd probably still get 5%. So you're asking me for 20% for 5 things, but you don't offer 20% for 5 things. And it just turns the conversation around to just one number. And it made the negotiation so much easier, because we ended up not going through the value of each asset. As long as it looked reasonable, it was purely about what discount, and you can refer it to what they do, and it brought it back to being real. We also made sure that we included assets that money can't buy, because I knew how valuable they were. And that no one else can offer. So things like come for an exclusive dinner in the changing room, and we still do that. That's incredibly popular with sponsors, because nobody else gets to go in the changing room. So that's really special. So how did it go? Well, we decreased the number of sponsors on our home kit and on our away kit from 9 to 3, and that was a conscious move, because we wanted a much less cluttered shirt, and we wanted it therefore a much better cut through, because we knew that that was better value for sponsors. We separated out sponsorship of our European kit. The European kit wasn't important to Big Doug, our main sponsor, because they only operate in the UK. So we separated it out and got a separate sponsorship for that. And we also separated out our training kit, so because that didn't need to be included with the Big Doug program. So we've got an additional sponsor for that. And the overall result of that was that our kit sponsorship revenue increased by just over 100%. So a huge increase in sponsorship, and all the shirts looked better because they were far less cluttered than before. So the kit sponsorship went up by 100%, other sponsorship went up by 30%. So overall, our sponsorship went up by 50%. And we forecast that our overall sponsorship will grow by another 40% in the next 3 years with the assets that we know we have and that we're working on selling. But taking a long-term view, not accepting £1,000 for something that's worth 5,000 for now, because we know that we'll get more than that if we hold our nerve and continue to target. So just to summarize what I've said, if I was going to offer you advice, and I really don't want to teach anybody to suck eggs, but from my experience, identify what you've got to sell and value it, and what you would be prepared to accept for it. Spend some time identifying suitable potential partners, put together a clear proposal for them, and make sure you make it exciting. Rugby is an exciting game. Sponsorship proposals have to be exciting to build on the excitement of the game. If you can include some visuals and some videos of your team and your club, do that, because that is exciting. Don't get downhearted by knockbacks, because you'll get loads of them, and we did. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And importantly, don't underestimate the things that you think are normal. I mean, if you said have a dinner in the changing room, you might think that that's an incredible experience, and why would you want to do that? But people who don't get to go in the changing rooms think that that's amazing, and it's been hugely successful for us. So thank you very much for your attention today. I'm hoping I've got the timing just about right, and then I've got time for a few questions if there are any. Let me have a look at the chat.
Yeah, Lance, I've got one so far that's popped in. I think people are listening intently, so we've asked people to, if guys, if you want to pop any other questions in the chat, we've probably got 3 or 4 minutes to go to Lance. But Lance, one that came through, which I think you kind of started to pick up at the end, was how do you work out the value of each asset?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the way that we did it was, and I know that we have an advantage with some of this, but for the big sponsorship items that are seen on television, you can get media valuation reports for them. So and it'll always say, oh, this is worth £1 million, and you never get £1 million for it. You know that it's a factor of half or a third of that, or whatever it might be. But for other assets like lounge sponsorship, it's kind of based on, well, what would the company doing it get out of that? How many people would they get to meet? How many people's data would they get to collect? What have we got for it in the past? What's best practice? So talking to other clubs about what they get for their lounge or what they get for a perimeter board. And with the Prem clubs, we're all fierce rivals on the pitch, but not off the pitch. So we quite happily share that kind of information with each other, especially where clubs are a bit further away from us. So it's a bit of experience. It's a bit of if you can get valuations. I appreciate that's not the case for everybody, but if you can look up, what does it cost to advertise in the local paper or on the local paper's website? What's the reach of that? So that's the kind of ballpark that you're talking about. That's how we came up with these numbers. It's not a precise science. In the end, the value of an asset is it is what you do have to base it on the value, but if you get it wrong, nobody will buy it. So you might need to revisit it. But we value everything, and we don't tend to go more than 10% away from what we want for it.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one last request: if there's any other questions you'd like to put to Lance, then please just pop them into the chat now. Otherwise,
shall I stop sharing that? So.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah. So, okay, so it leaves me to say, well, firstly, thank you ever so much, Lance, for giving up your time and to giving us your insights, both from the game poacher term gamekeeper, as I think you were talking about earlier. Yeah. I think there's some real good little takeaways that clubs could look at whatever their level are. And I appreciate that you're operating the Premiership, so there are certain things you can do that others can't, but there are some great takeaways there. So thank you ever so much for your time. For everybody else, if we've got 2 sessions that are running from 7:15. One is sponsorship, which is running with my club to business manager Martin Woodward, and the other one is about running events.